All right. Hey, everybody. Sorry, I am a little bit behind. So give me a moment because we got to get the main event ready. As we're doing this, a nice nitro pour here for today's live stream. So, welcome everybody to the June 2024 Rooftops of America live stream. I think this is number 23. Who knows? I don't know if the numbers even matter anymore. I hope everybody is having a wonderful evening. Thank you so much for being here. It's been a day. It has been a day. So before we get into the main event, tonight's companion on our journey is Old Left Hand Brewing. And since we're in the heart of summer, it's their Sun-Kissed Dreams Nitro Tropical Mango and Guava. Doing the mango and guava because this time next week I'll be in Puerto Rico where guava is king. And it's not bad. So hope everybody's doing tonight. Hey Eric, hey Pretzel, hey Bill. Thanks for being here. It's been, like I said, what's happened in the last 2 weeks? Utah came out. Thanks everybody who checked it out. Thanks for your comments. I really appreciate them. Apparently, y'all liked it, so that makes me happy. You've heard me talk about it for you've heard me talk about basically since we started this live stream months, like over a year ago. So I don't know if there's anything more we need to say about Utah other than it's done, it's out there. So anyway, this is in addition to that, hitting the street today, I got there's a couple things. First, I met up with today at Little Buffalo State Park here in PA, over by it's sort of northwest of Harrisburg. Met up with a bunch of fellow content creators from Pennsylvania, and I've got a list. I'm going to give them shout outs because, if you're looking for other channels to check out on stuff, and I'm not sure why I sent the list to my buddy Dave, but he's probably like confused as anybody. But hey, Davey gets a fun text. But met up with a bunch of content creators. There's a channel out there hosted by a guy named Walter Zolna, and he had a YouTube meetup for Pennsylvania outdoor nature type content creators. And in addition to our very own traveling Ron Man, who has also made it home on time to be on the chat, at least I'm assuming he did. In addition to finally meeting him in person, I was happy to meet, and here we go, we're going to start from the top. And I know I'm going to forget folks, and I apologize in advance for that, but Darcy's Hiking Diaries, Bill from Maximum Outdoors, Jeremy 78, Bus Campers, Old Dude on the Trail, Hiker Dude Dad, Hiking Outdoor Family, our very own traveling Ron Man, Too Much Gear, PA Timber Ghost, Grace's Garden, Mountains to Memories, the Wandering Woodsman. I know some of you definitely are following his channel. He's sort of like the man now for Pennsylvania content. Day Hike Dave, Lumberjack PA, and then Walter, of course, for hosting. So it was great. It was a really good turnout. It's the first one I've ever went to, and I loved it. We had a nice, fun little hike around Little Buffalo, parked there and checked out some of the Bluebell Tavern there, which if you ever get a chance, definitely worth going into. There are a couple other sites. One of my long-time favorite photography things is Covered Bridges, and there's I think it was Clay's Covered Bridge is there. So, but overall, it was just a great day. It was really cool to meet some of these creators that I've followed for a while, and just get to talk shop. And I always sort of um, like that. I mean, it's it's really cool to see how people approach how they develop their content, how they approach their subject matter, I should say. And by the way, I want to apologize also ahead because I've been up since 4:30, and I sort of feel like I'm going nonstop. And I'm a bit tired, so if this conversation veers all over the place, stick with me. So, um, yeah, but overall, like, it was just really cool to compare notes. I mean, and I think one of my big takeaways is they're doing their thing and I'm doing my thing, and there's plenty of space for all of us to do it, support it, and just I mean, I do a very distinct thing, and so do those guys, and it's nice to have that sort of community. Um, and it was just good to meet folks and share those old war stories, so to speak. So let's see what we got in the chat. Andrew, thank you for being here. Will you do 20? Well, this is number 20. Well, if you would count all the live streams from when we've done it, there's more than 23, but this is live stream number 23 because I have a nasty habit of, if it falls on a holiday or I go somewhere, of changing the title to Rooftops of America live stream Memorial Day edition. So it really, numbering and me are, they're guidelines. So, Bill, I said saw you before, so glad you're here. David, thanks for being here as well. And wonders if any national park high point or other county high points, any national park high point that's a state high point is automatically a county high point too, unless you're talking about areas where they don't really use counties. So, yeah, and I think there's only, I don't even know what Alaska is anymore. I know they have, is it census districts, or they have some counties and something else, and Louisiana's parishes, and that's all Napoleonic Code stuff, and we're not going to go down that road tonight. So, made another spreadsheet, average county high point height for each state. I'd love to see it. And then follow Wandering Woodsman, even though I'm through our side of the PA. He's great. Like, he's just a good guy. He really knows his stuff. If you don't know, he's an instructor, and he's more than an instructor. I'm using a very distinct military term there, but he's a teacher. I want to say he teaches at a college, I thought. He's bona fide, let's put it that way. So definitely worth He's definitely worth checking out. Is everyone invited to the group hikes? If so, where would you get to see the scheduled hikes? I've never set up a group hike, but if you guys would potentially be interested in it, we could probably try and organize something. I literally got this invite from Ron, Traveling Ron Man, shared it with me. He brought it up 2 weeks ago. And yeah, so this one was really focused on those Pennsylvania content creators, but it'd be something worth considering. So, Pretzel, any state you'd be particularly interested in for the average county high point hike? Of course, my home state of Wisconsin. So, which is going to probably not be very much. I'd say the average in Wisconsin is probably around 900,000 feet. That might be a little low, but that's where I would guess. So, the other thing was, I went back with our conversation of last 2 weeks ago, and talking about where I would go after I'd finished the 50, 56, and if there's other places. And the first two I led with were the British Isles and Japan, and I've since then started digging a little deeper into those, um, and yes, that definitely those are going to be places for sure. But then I realized I knew I had written a document way back when, like 2016, when I'd just been in this for a couple months of bonus seasons, and I feel that it's worth sharing some of these um, some of these bonus seasons that I had started thinking about back in 2016. Um, so, of course, the top two literally are Ireland and the UK is like number one, Japan number two. So that's never changed. Like, I just conveniently seem to forget most of the rest of the list. And there's some things in there that would actually be really cool. So the third one was Scandinavia. And I believe I talked a little bit, but Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Iceland, the Faroe Islands, Finland, and Greenland. I'd have to throw that in there. So, and then there was Australia and New Zealand. And I know, Eric, I believe you have done the highest point in Australia. So, but I'd thrown in Australia and New Zealand there and then listed, like, it was pretty wild. Like, it was Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria, South Australia, Tasmania, the Australian Capital Territory, Western Australia, the Northern Territory, and then the North and South Islands of New Zealand. Ambitious? Yes. um, and then I moved out. I'm like, you know what else would be cool? Korea would be cool. But Korea, of course, is strictly limited to South Korea, because ain't no way this boy is getting into North Korea. So that one was interesting to me too, because I'm looking at these peaks and or the territories or the states or the provinces. I can't recall how South Korea is divvied up, but it was fascinating. But of all of them, there were two that I thought could really be interesting in addition. One's the Balkans and Greece. I think that would be a really um, fascinating trip. There's a lot of interesting history in that area. Um, that one I think also would be a little more challenging. Then I had listed out stuff for the Caribbean too. And back when I wrote this in 2016, I think relations with Cuba were a little more open than they are now. They've always been a little bit, well, more than a little bit, but and Haiti is no place to go these days either. But I'd started listing out that. But here's the one that I actually thought of all of them is the one that intrigues me the most these days, and it's the islands of the Mediterranean. And I'm not sure when I came up with this idea, but I listed out for that the Sardinia, Corsica, Malta, Cyprus, Crete, Sicily, the Balearic Islands, and the Isle of Rhodes. And there's probably I mean, have you seen how many islands are in the Aegean Sea? But those were the big ones. And honestly, when I'm looking at the list these days, like looking at it since I brought it back out, that's the one that I think if I do the British Isles and I do Japan, I think that would be a fun way to sort of do something interesting, but not necessarily the same as everything else. Um, and the history of those places. I mean, you could, there's so much, there's just so much to talk about any one of those islands. It would be really cool. So that's back on the table as maybe a bucket list type thing to high point the top 10 largest islands in the Mediterranean. So, yeah. So what else we got in the chat? Okay, so no, nine. I said 900 to 1,000. 900 feet to 1,000 feet. So yeah, but I was under. I underestimated 1407. Utah again, top of the list. Average height of that just blows my mind that their average county high point is that high. That's crazy. Last week, Bill, you got high points 26 or 30. Well done, sir. Iowa. Oh, you did the Midwest Loop. You did the Midwest, and you picked up the 4590 out of Poniatowski. Good man. Did you get your medal? Hold on. I actually have one. Somewhere around here. It's going to say for the next one, but you can get a 4590, a really nice like a disc from the Wausau Convention Center. I'll put the link in the chat. Contact them, and they'll mail it to you. You might have to pay a couple bucks for shipping. But pro tip, at one point, if you did the 4590 and you drove over to Wausau and you stopped in the convention center when they were open, they'd give it to you. Sign the book, and the whole works. So I love that 4590 right out of the field there. It is definitely a cool geographical thing, being halfway between the North Pole and the equator, and then halfway from the prime meridian to the international date line. So I've sent $8 to get the medallion for my son. Okay, visitor center it's still currently closed. It was closed. It's been closed for a long time, which is unfortunate. Well, congratulations on a very successful Midwest Loop. I hope my home state of Wisconsin treated you all kindly, and I don't care so much about those folks in Michigan and Minnesota. No, just kidding. But I'm sure you guys had a wonderful trip. 20 state high points, one alternate in the national parks. 1239. Okay. Andrew did High Point 9 2 weeks ago. South Carolina was a pleasant surprise. It used to not have a great view. The first time I ever went up there in 2013, that was all enclosed. That High Point, I think I mentioned it before, has changed so much in the past decade. Like radical change from a completely enclosed wooded environment to being clear cut off and now having the observation platform. So, in fact, there was another person I was speaking to at the event today. I think it was old hiker dude was talking about that. The Foothills Trail is one of the things that's on his docket. So I'm glad you had a great time down there in the dark corner of South Carolina. There'd be an insane amount of history for you to cover if you didn't. Yes, sir, there would. Like, how many ways do you want to cut it? It would be, I would nerd out so hard talking about all the history that is in the Mediterranean. So I'd be happy with Mount Olympus in Greece. Same here. That's actually one of the peaks, one of the country high points that I've always sort of wanted to do, because it's Mount Olympus, right? So I wonder how many kind of high points I drove over in Kansas. Depends on where you drove. All right, then again, the road for any of these, not necessarily. It'd be interesting to see how the road maps lay out. But yeah, so other things going on right now. Well, like I said, Puerto Rico next week, which is a great opportunity for me to pick up any outside footage that I haven't picked up since, it's been a year since we filmed the original stuff. And now there's the gaps, so I can fill some of the gaps and hopefully get that one out quicker than Utah. Still, it's dragging a little bit, but that's on me. So, also coming up is, once I get back from Puerto Rico, I'm really hoping to do New York. That script's come along really well. There's some really cool hooks on Mount Marcy, story-wise, for narrative beats that I think is going to make it a fun episode. And I've changed my mind. I was going to overnight it, but I think now I'm going to use it as a long distance training hike for Whitney. So I'm going to do that 14 out and back in one push and see how it goes. So, and then Whitney's coming. Like, plane tickets are getting bought next week, so it's becoming very real. And I'm not nervous. I feel like I'm definitely in better condition. Definitely in better condition than I was for like Utah. And so I recognize that it's going to be a good 2 days, but like, I'm prepared. I feel good about it right now. So, I mean, we get that convenient break at trail camp. So for me, that long day is really, do a little up, do a lot of down. One of the other things I've noted in so in my training hikes for this week, I ended up taking the car into the shop, and forgetting that I had my trekking poles in said car, and had to do all my training hikes without them this week. Well, since Wednesday. And let me tell you, I've once again, it reaffirmed my belief and love of trekking poles. Because I did the Mount Misery, Mount Joy Loop in Valley Forge yesterday, and honestly, man, poles make the difference. These days for me, I can't say enough how much I love my trekking poles. So, another shout out for trekking poles. All right, so let's see what else we got. I used Marcy's training hub for Whitney as well. Definitely a long day. Yep. The hike really doesn't start until the switchbacks anyway. Yeah. My buddy Brett, who's going with us, he's done Whitney now. This will be his fourth time. So, it's going to be, it's good that I have somebody that's been there and that's done that particular route. He's done the Mountaineers route as well, and this route. So he knows the shooting locations too, like ideal spots. So we don't have to guess on that, which does save time. And, saving time on filming means saving time on the hike. So let's see. Eric, I've researched how marathoners train to help me prepare for my Miami hikes. I'm pretty much using that to build my training schedule. I need to build my endurance. So far, so good. So I actually dusted off my a book called Going Long for training for iron distance triathlon. And once I get Whitney out of the way and I continue the focus, because I've concluded that training for Denali started in April 24. So April 2024, Denali training has started. And I'm going to use Going Long, use some of the training stuff out of there, get back in the pool, do a little more pool work, and just start using that sort of schedule in addition to some of the other stuff and tailoring it to the conditions I find myself in today. I still do feel like Rocky in, in the movie, like heavy runnings out, and all that. But I think it's going to help to have that type of schedule. So, Eric, I applaud you going that route as well. It's a good route to go. So, all right. What else is happening? Honestly, like, my mind right now is completely focused on going to Puerto Rico. And Rooftops wise, Arizona is coming up next. You're going to see that at the end of the month. All the voiceover is done. I've laid in all the live footage except for the hiking elements and some of the drone footage. and now I'm populating voiceover sections with stills. So that's coming along very nicely, and you all should see that hopefully by the end of the month. I don't see why you wouldn't. Like, I'm ahead of the game on that one, and I'm feeling really good about, like, there's no weird we're missing something or that on Arizona. Um, so what is actually interesting was you're going to notice there are different, like, it is because of the format we did it and highlighting those 7 areas, it is slightly paced different than a traditional episode. Still shooting around 40 minutes, but it's more of a not a clip show, but really like, oh, we're going to this location. Oh, we're going to this location. Oh, we're going to this location. So slightly different than what we've done in the past. And I'm not sure how I feel about that, to be honest. Like, I like having that sort of strong narrative all the way through. And some of it's there, but the this one's slightly, I don't know, it's interesting. Um, so it's just, I think the reason I don't like it is because it's different than what I normally, like I have it. I'm a creature of habit, and once I get in those habits, it's hard for me to break out of it. So, um, is one of your goals to make your old episodes, shorter episodes, full? Yeah, it is. So everything that this is what bothers me so much about South Dakota, because South Dakota was so close to the cut line. The cut line's 23 minutes. And candidly, I don't know how the hell I did not get that out of South Dakota. Like, there's no excuse. South Dakota, the Black Hills are rich in history. I just had to flap my yap for like 6 more minutes and we would have been right as rain. So, but hey, perfect excuse to go back to Black Elk Peak. It's a beautiful place. There's plenty of cool stuff there. Spend an extra day and make it amazing. So, but yeah, and that's actually, Kentucky's going to get a redo this year. West Virginia might get a redo this year as well. So those might actually happen in the same sort of travel period. Kentucky, once again, another area. High Point. Kentucky reminds me so much of Delaware in some ways, in the fact that the High Point's nothing to it. You don't take people to Black Mountain, Kentucky, if you're going to try to convince them to get into High Point. And that's, being a little bit dismissive of that High Point, but it's not, it's sort of ugly up top and there's no view. And, I've ranted about this one before, but the area itself, wow, that's another story. Like, the history of that area, Harlan County, bloody Harlan, the coal wars, the mining strikes. It's, the ghost story about that with Headless Alice. I mean, there's so much there that if I honestly, um, Kentucky was filmed when I still felt it was essential to focus just on the mountain and not talk about the region. Oh, Nicholas, 23 minutes was the goal because that's an episode of TV for a half an hour. So if you're going to watch classic American television, you're watching a half-hour sitcom, 23 minutes is the actual length of that material. 47 for an hour. The rest of that time is all commercial. So the goal always was to hit that marker beyond, because then we could take the series and say, look, we've made the time marks here, and potentially see if somebody ever want to pick it up and maybe do something with it. That's become, over time, that became more of a, that would be really awesome, but it's a want, not a need. And I'm now so far into this that this is going to happen regardless. But that particular little guideline always sort of stuck, that every episode should be the length of at least a half hour of TV. And there are certain episodes that I did. In fact, one of the reasons Delaware became one of the first ones I ever did longer in that first few was to prove the point that I could do it, that I could take something like Ebright Azimuth, which, for the folks that have been there, you're walking down a sidewalk and there it is, and actually tell a better story, and explore that area in more depth. How do I plan to do Alaska's episode? Hard questions today. Hey, Pretzel. Okay. Alaska's episode is probably the closest we're going to get to a mini-series on this channel. That one and Agrahan really are going to be different. They're going to be multiple parts because there's so much that goes into both of those when it comes to getting there, in various ways, shapes, or form. For Alaska, like getting there means, trekking all the way up the mountain, whereas in Agrahan, it's getting to Guam, getting to Saipan, taking a boat. The kids love ships these days. So the way I want to sketch that out is break up the material that would normally be that's front loaded when you're getting the background and all that, but splice it through, say, a 3-part episode that, so as we're ascending, you're also getting the background. So it sort of changes the narrative a little bit, the narrative structure, but it's still, you're going to get the whole thing. You're just going to get the courses served a little bit different. That's the intent with like Alaska and Agrahan. Those, I feel, really require a better, those are features. Like these are TV shows. Those are movies. I don't know if that helps, but that's how I've been thinking about it. Is when you watch TV show, you're getting this very certain thing. You know what you're going to consume, and that's what a majority of Rooftops of America episodes are. But Agrahan and Denali, those are going to be like the movies, like Star Trek, Next Generation. Ran the whole series. Then they went to the movies. That's how I'm looking at it. So those are going to be, there's so many logistics that I have not figured out for either of those. And I gotta really figure that stuff out. So I have general ideas. Believe it or not, one of the proving grounds, one of the testing grounds for this is going to be like Gannett Peak. Doing that multi-day hiking thing and figuring out how to present that. So Gannett really will be like the proving ground for some of the tricks and tips or tricks and techniques we will use on Denali. Hopefully that's a long answer to your question. So since we're on the subject, what's the least worth it high point? Well, I love them all. Even, a place like Kentucky. I mean, I might slag on it a little bit, but it's still special. But I wrestle with this. Here's an answer for you, Andrew. I think Kentucky's on that of the bottom 5. And I'm looking at this as not just the high point itself. The high point is special enough to go to on its own, but what's around it that makes it also interesting that, for folks to enjoy. So Ebright Azimuth is not on it. Why? Because you got Philadelphia up the road. You got Wilmington. You've got other, even, parks in the immediate area. Like, there's other things. But you get to a place, say, you get to like Mount Sunflower. There's nothing really around it. So honestly, that's sort of on the list. But Panorama Point isn't, surprisingly, because Panorama Point has Scotts Bluff. It has Chimney Rock. It has, you can live your Oregon Trail adventure right there, So there are these other things in the area that make it interesting, and give folks additional stuff to do. I think Devil's Tower across the way in Wyoming. So, but even, Black Mountain, well, Black Mountain really, there's other stuff there. There's I want to say the Interstate Park is there, and that's beautiful. Like, Harlan County is ridiculously pretty. That area of Kentucky is actually good. So the High Point is lackluster, but there are other things to do there. So I feel like Kansas and Oklahoma, if I was going to judge that are, not worth it, the least worth it, might be on that list. I'm going to have to come back with a better answer, I think, because I'm putting more baggage on it than just the High Point itself. What can you do to keep a charge on your phone and camera during multiple batteries, my son? Multiple batteries. And use your devices sparingly. So when I write out my script, I write out what camera is going to be doing which sections. So, and this is the problem with Alaska. Like, Alaska's going to change everything. How much equipment, how much stuff we got to bring, how many spare battery packs to charge stuff do we got to bring, how much footage is actually essential to bag every day, and all that. So that has to all be thought out, all planned out. But so for something like Utah, where we were out there for 2 days of heavy filming, I ran through 2 batteries in the prime camera, and half a battery on my phone, and 1 battery on a GoPro. So you can sort of calculate that out. But like, if right now in the arsenal itself, I've got 6 batteries for my Nikon, in various states. 3 brand new, 3 that are, 3 that are a little more long in the tooth. They've been doing good years of service, but they'll be replaced by the end of the year. And the same with the GoPro 11. I've got 3 batteries for that. And then the old GoPro 4 that I use for all that driving footage, I've got 3 batteries for that. So, and then I have a battery pack that can recharge my phone and stuff like that. All right. Eric, yes. If you're in, I'm going to need some folks, man. There will be an expedition for Agrahan. Iowa should be a benchmark for places like Kentucky with the area for built-up tourist attraction. Yeah, Bill, you're not wrong. The old, well, so it's funny you bring up the old Firewatch Tower. I want to say the reason that hasn't been torn down yet is because the state has said you can't tear it down yet. But I don't disagree with you there. And, Tim's Hill, actually, it's a good point. Tim's Hill should probably be on that list, because outside of the Hill of Beans, you got to go to Tomahawk, you got to go to Phillips, or down to Medford. Ogama doesn't have much in the way of amenities. So Iowa, up in that corner too, you're sort of out in the middle of nowhere. You got Sibley, and that's not bad. And you go down the road, I think Cherokee's a little bit further down, but you're sort of stuck out there. So Nebraska hasn't had a convention yet, although, honestly, that might be the next. I haven't done a top 10 list yet. So, Andrew, maybe you gave me a really good idea, um, to do a grading of sorts of not just the high point, but the things around it and evaluate that. So, thank you for a good question, man. Um, Nebraska hasn't had a convention yet, though. Is there any convention centers close by? So the closest thing there is Kimball, and Kimball probably could do it. It's a small town, but it probably could do it. I mean, you got I-80 and all that. So Portal 31 is an old coal mine tour on Black Mountain. Very interesting to me. Yeah, that was when we were driving up. Um, that was one of the areas we actually stopped there and filmed some stuff for the original episode, but we didn't take the tour because we didn't have time. So I think if I'd go back, I would take that tour and at least pick up some footage of that because it's so critical to the story itself. Uh, all right. Yeah, you'd have to find. I trying to think the biggest thing around the Cheyenne, maybe might be Rapid City, but you're getting far away if you're doing that. So Scotts Bluff, but that ain't that big either. You're sort of in the middle of nowhere when you're in that part of Nebraska. There's stuff along the Platte River, but overall, it's sparse pickings. So, all right, man, this went relatively quick, and this beer went down relatively fast. So, I really appreciate y'all coming today. And like I said, it's been a good 2 weeks. A lot of good things going on. A lot of good things coming down the pipe. And then, yeah. So I will see you all after a week in Puerto Rico. And I hope until that point, you guys have an awesome 2 weeks. And that if you're out there bagging high points, best of luck to you. And thanks for being here. So I'll talk to y'all soon.